Straight all day.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That's the go-getter energy that moves you and me to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, one master class. It is known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is learned plus earned. This is an expertise equation. So as you build your expertise, or you're building your brand, or you're creating content, you're putting value out there into the world, whatever you're creating, however you're putting it out, this is the equation for how you're going to be creating that new value, that new content that you're putting out to whomever your audience may be. Maybe you don't even know who they are yet. But if you are or plan on being an expert at a topic, or you're going to be one, you will need both sides of this equation working for you, because both sides of this equation have specific uses and specific applications. So that's what we're talking about here today. Again, the topic is learned plus earned. So let's get into our points. Point number one, we'll start on the second end of that equation, which is the earned knowledge. And again, we're talking about expertise here today. Earned expertise are basically, in short, the experiences that you've been through. So let's take a step back. Before you can use your experiences as expertise, the things that you've gone through, things you've lived through, the places that you've been, the places where you've had boots on the ground, you've been 10 toes down, knee deep in the game. First of all, we got to ask a question. Have you actually been anywhere? Have you actually been anywhere? Now, we talked a couple episodes ago how back in the day, let's say 20 plus years ago, if you want to interact with other people and have build up your communication skills and talk to people and know people, you had to actually come outside. You had to be outside where everybody else was at, or you had to go to where people were gathering, physically gathering, because there was no other way to connect with people. These days, you can connect with people from the convenience of your home, because you could do it through any type of social media platform. You connect with all these different people without ever actually physically meeting these individuals. And an interesting thing happened. I was at a conference a few months ago, and I met these women who were cool with each other from different sides of the world. One of the women was from Oregon, another woman was from London, and I asked, how did you two meet? And they said they met in a Facebook group. And they started telling me how they met and how they built their relationship, and they told me that us at this conference was our first time actually meeting in person. And I was like, wow, it's really interesting. I mean, it's not the first people who've ever done that, but that's what happens these days. But back then, you had to actually physically be in the same place as another person to ever meet that individual. And for you, here's the thing. Even though you can connect with people through a Facebook or an Instagram or whatever social platform, or your email or whatever it is you're doing online, you can connect with people that way, and it's great. Listen, I'm not against it. A lot of you have never met me in person, and you wouldn't know who I was if you needed to meet me in person in order to be listening to this right now. You still need to physically go through things. You still need to physically have some experiences in order to create value in your message. In other words, if we just think about this, if I was going to, let's say I decided that I was going to write a book about playing basketball, but I had never actually played basketball. I mean, that wouldn't really make sense. Even though I may object and say, well, look, I read 20 books about basketball. I've been to a whole bunch of basketball games. I got NBA League Pass, which is this service that you buy where you can watch every basketball game in the NBA every single night, and you get replays of every game that's taking place. I could literally watch every basketball game that takes place over the course of a season. So I got League Pass. I read 20 books on basketball. I go to 100 basketball games a year. I could say, my cousin played basketball. My best friend plays basketball every single day. I read all these articles, every article by a basketball writer that comes out every morning on ESPN. I read all of those. But I took in all this information about basketball. Aren't I qualified to write a book about basketball? Technically, I'm qualified the moment that I put the pen to the paper or my thumbs to the keyboard, but who's going to read that book? That's the question. Would you read a book about basketball by a person who never actually played basketball or doesn't have any experience in the game? Now, Somebody could write about basketball. Maybe they were a journalist and they studied a particular person or a particular team or some era. They could write that and you would listen to it or you would read it because you know that they were deep in it. They were studying that thing deep enough that you're like, all right, I want to hear what this person says from their first person observation. Or if a person was a coach and they write a book about their coaching experience, we'll read that. Or if someone was a trainer and they want to write about their experience as a trainer and what they saw, we'll read that. But if someone's talking about playing basketball, they want to write a book about this is what you need to do to be a good player, but they never played, or they never did anything close to playing, you're like, all right, that doesn't make any sense. You don't have any experience in this area rather. If I was to write a book about, I don't know, paving roads, but I've never paved the road, I don't know anyone who's paved the road, I have no experience in that in any way whatsoever, not even tangentially, it doesn't make any sense for me to call myself an expert in that area. And even if I did call myself an expert, nobody could stop me from doing it. Who's going to listen to what I have to say? Because the first question you're going to be asking yourself is, all right, first of all, you're going to ask, what do I get out of this? This person's supposedly an expert on this subject. I'm interested in this subject. Let me see what they're offering. And maybe what I'm offering sounds good enough that you're like, all right, let me see what else. The next question you're going to ask is, all right, who are you to be teaching it? Why should I learn it from you? All right, the things that you're teaching, they sound interesting enough, but why are you the person who's going to be teaching it? And now you want to know what? You want to know my credibility. You want to know where I've been. You want to know my experience. You want to know my resume. Now, if my resume does not reflect that I've been doing the things that I'm teaching, then you're probably going to move on to the next webpage or the next possibility for whoever could be teaching this subject if you really want to know about it. So what is your experience? Where have you earned your expertise? For those who are not reading in between the lines, I think I've said it clearly enough though. Earning your expertise means you're actually doing something to where you learn that information. You learn it through what you've actually done. Okay? Earned experience. Where have you actually been? That's the question that I'm asking you. Now, this is not a rhetorical question for you. It's a rhetorical question coming from me to you, but it's a question that you need to mine your own experience and ask yourself, where have I been anywhere? What have I actually done that will separate me from somebody else who may be interested in the same topic? Maybe they've read the same books that I've read. Maybe they've listened to the same other experts that I've listened to. Maybe they had the same level of enthusiasm about the topic as me. But what have I done? Where have I physically been? Had my feet on the ground that would separate me from the other 100, 1,000, 1 million people who are interested in the same thing? For example, there are millions of people in this world who are interested in a topic like basketball, just keeping that example. So if I'm going to write about basketball, what's going to separate me from the other million people who are interested in it and the other, let's say 10,000 who may go as far as wanting to write a book about it? What makes my book different from their book? Well, what makes mine different is that I got real life experience, that I've been to all these different countries playing basketball, that I played in college and walked on, that I played in high school, that I played in the streets, that I put videos on YouTube, that I was one of the first people building a brand off doing this stuff. All of those things, those experiences separate me from all the other people who may have the same level of enthusiasm or interest, or maybe even better at writing a book than me. Who knows? But the experiences are what separate me. Those are what give me credibility that other people don't have. And those are the things that are going to make people listen to me when they have 20 different choices of who to listen to. So your question again to you is, where have you been? What have you done? What experiences do you have that make you a person that is worth listening to? I got several masterclasses on experience that I'll refer you to here. And you would actually need to go through the master list of all the master classes in the game group membership. We have that listed there, so you can see everywhere where I've talked about getting experience in life and going to places. I just want to refer you to a few of them because there are over 40 of them. As I'm looking at the list right now, I'm not going to list out all 40, but I'm just giving you a few. First of all, see masterclass number 1401 just a couple weeks ago, where I talked about the 5 levels of expertise in life. If you want to be an expert, you must go through the 5 levels of expertise, or hopefully you go through all 5 levels. Masterclass 1238, how to become an expert at anything that you do in life. Masterclass number 998, how to establish and spread your expertise. And I'll give you one more. I did an interview with one of my mentors, Dawn in St. Louis, and she talked about becoming the expert in your space. That was Masterclass number 756. I mentioned Dawn also in chapter, I believe it's chapter 11 of my book, Work on Your Game. So go listen to those masterclasses, and again, go through the entire masterclass master list so you can get all the masterclasses on experience. You must develop your experiences to add to the knowledge that you have, or to bolster the knowledge that you have, or even get people to pay attention to the knowledge that you have. If people don't know you have experience doing something, they don't want to hear you talking about it. So how do you get it? Now I'm giving you all the reasons why you need experience. Now let me tell you how to actually obtain the experience. It's actually very simple, but for some of you it may not be very easy. And for some of you it may not be as convenient as you want it to be. But I'm going to keep it simple for you. I'm going to tell you what it is, and what you choose to do with this information is up to you. Here's how you get it. Get out of the house, get off your smartphone, and go do things. That's it. Do I need to say it again? You need to write it down? Let me say it again so you can write it down. Get out of the house, get off your smartphone, and go do things. Go interact with real people in real life. I mean, people where you can like shake their hand. Real life experience is the only way to get earned expertise. And this is an investment. You got to invest your time, your money, your attention, your energy into getting this real life experience. Earned expertise lends credibility, as I talked about. People want to know that you have actually lived the things that you're talking about, that you're writing about. Not just you read a book or you watched a video, because anybody can read a book or watch a video, but not too many people are willing to go get their hands dirty actually doing the thing. All right, anybody can read or watch from their couch. It has very little value because all of us can do it, and we all got access to Google. We can pretty much get access to any information anytime that we want. Everything that I talk about as an expert are things that I have personally lived, and anything that you're talking about as an expert, it should be something that you personally live, because if you haven't personally lived it, you're probably not going to have much of an audience of people who want to hear it from you, because they're like, well, what the hell are you going to tell me? You ain't did nothing. Your feet got to be on the ground in these places doing the things that you're going to talk about. Have I made that clear? Point number 2. Today's topic is learned plus earned. This is an expertise equation. The second category is the one that's first in the title, which is learned knowledge. This is knowledge that you glean from others. Now, many people go through, or knowledge that you glean not only from others, but also from yourself. I should add that in too. Many people go through lots of experiences in life, but we learn very little from those experiences, or we go through experiences, but what we went through only matters to us, the person who went through the experience, and it doesn't matter to anyone else. The problem with that is that you create very little value or no value whatsoever. If you go through an experience, you don't learn anything from it, or you learn something, but it only applies to you. All right, you can't create value if you can't help anybody else with what you know or what you've done. So what this means is, the other side of this is, your experiences must be examined. So I went through experiences as an athlete, right? Making myself into a semi-competent player as a teen, then sitting on the bench in high school, then walking on in college, and then going through challenges in college, dealing with different coaches, and then I'm out of the basketball program, and a year not playing basketball at all, or just playing at a gym after I graduated from college and going to it. And exposure camp, which is like a job fair for athletes, playing well at that exposure camp, getting myself an agent. The agent helped me get a job, getting to pro basketball, going through years of pro ball and the challenges with that, and starting a business at the same time, building a brand at the same time. All these things that I went through, all these experiences, they were a lot of experiences. And if you read my book, Work on Your Game, my first book, Buy a Game, which you can get for free at workonmygame.com/buy-a-game. If you read any of my books where I talked about my basketball experience, you know that I've been through a lot of experiences. But here's the thing. Those books wouldn't exist if I had not examined my experiences and asked myself, okay, what from these experiences can other people learn? And I'm asking myself, what can 2 different types of people learn? Number 1, a person who may go through the exact same thing. How can I save them some time, save them some effort, save them some money, save them some energy by showing them some things that nobody showed me before I went through it? So that's one athlete who's going to follow my exact same path. The other thing I had to ask myself as I'm examining my experiences, what about somebody who's not going through this? What about someone who's not a basketball player? Maybe they don't play sports at all. Maybe they're a business person. Maybe they're some type of entrepreneur. Maybe they're interested in sports. Maybe they go to the gym every day, but they're not an athlete and they're not trying to become a pro athlete like I was trying to become a pro athlete, how can they get any value from these experiences that I've been through? I had to ask myself that question. That's a very good question. It's a very insightful question. I talked about insight, and let me tell you what masterclass I talked about insight. That was number 1177. Insight is the key from going from 1x to 10. The key to going from 1x to 10x is asking yourself really good questions, even though you may not have the answers to those questions. So when I ask myself the question, how can I take my experiences and make it valuable to someone who doesn't even play sports, doesn't even play basketball, not even trying to do the things that I do? That's when I start getting answers. That's how I came up with a philosophy like work on your game. That's where I came up with a lot of the materials for a lot of the books that I've written. I sourced from a lot of my experiences as an athlete, but I asked myself, how can these translate to someone who's in the business world, or someone who's an entrepreneur, someone who's a freelancer, someone who's trying to get a job, someone who's working at a company, somebody who has a boss or a supervisor or coworkers that they had to deal with the same way I got to deal with teammates and coaches and trainers. So asking these questions, examining my experiences, is what created new value. So learned expertise is a knowledge that you glean from, number one, your personal experiences. That's what I was just talking about, right? And that's not all. So examining the experiences is figuring out what happened, then asking yourself why it happened, then asking yourself how it happened. Let me say those again. What happened, why it happened, and then how it happened. When you can answer those questions, and usually there'll be a list under all three of those. What happened I just gave you a very short synopsis of my basketball career. I told you a whole lot of what's that happened. There are a whole lot of sub-what's within each one of those. What happened? I can make a whole list of 50 things that happened in my basketball career. Then, why did those things happen? I can make you another list, another 50 to 100 things of why these things took place. Because there could be multiple whys. So like, I got my perspective on why they happened, but if you ask my coaches or my teammates why these things happen, they may have different reasons why it happened. And they're all examinable. Those are all things that I can dig into. So now you got a list of why these things happen, then how it happened. How did these things come to be? And again, people have different interpretations of how things took place. I might say it happened this way. Somebody else might say it happened that way. And everybody has their own version of a story, right? So these are all different points that I could use and talk about. These could all be blog posts. These could all be chapters in a book. These could all be episodes of a podcast. But asking yourself what, why, and how will help you examine your experiences, and you get the information from other people. All right, this is the other way that you glean knowledge. So when you're listening to me right now, I'm telling you some things, and you're going to take what you get from me, combine it, because again, I told you this is the expertise equation here today. It's not just one thing. You combine this with your experiences, and then you can create something new, which is pretty much what I do to create the things that I create. I learn from other people. I take notes. I listen again. I rewatch. I reread. I examine the information I get from other people, why they're saying the things that they're saying, what actually happened to them, how it happened, the reasons they think it happened, the reasons maybe I think or other people think it happened. Combine that with the experiences that I've been through, and then I can come up with something new. That's the expertise equation. I want you to understand, when you're taking in information from others in the form of books, lectures, events, a coach that you may have, a mentor, a video, a course that you took, you combine it with your experience, and you get a better understanding of the why. Understand that this is a skill. Learn something from another person, what they said, what they did, what they are going through, whatever way they want to explain it, or maybe something that you just saw. Maybe you observed something happening with another person. They're not even talking about it, but you just see it yourself. You can glean that knowledge from that person without you physically having to go through it, because we can't physically go through everything ourselves. We don't have enough time or energy, and we can't be in more than one place at once. But then figuring out why that's happening, or your interpretation of why it's happening, combine that with your experiences. Now you have some new knowledge that you've created. And this is a skill that you got to come up with, though. Just because you've been through stuff and you saw stuff doesn't mean you have new knowledge. But when you examine it and you figure out, how can I put this together and how can I make this valuable to a certain person? You got to have your audience in mind. Who's the person who can learn from this? Why would they learn from this? What are they going to get from this? What are they going to do with it? This is a skill that you must develop over time, but you got to put the time in to develop. There's an investment. The investment of time is figuring out, how does this work? How does this work? How does this create new knowledge? Who is this going to help? What are they going to get out of it? Why would it matter? And how can I explain this to them in such a way that they'll be willing to listen to me? Because if I'm going to give you a 30-minute masterclass, before you give me your 30 minutes of time and attention, first of all, I got to get you interested in what's going to happen in those 30 minutes. And that's a skill in itself. That's a sales skill. Even if you're not selling anything, I could be giving this to you for free. I might make a 30-minute YouTube video. It's free for you to watch the video. But first of all, I got to sell you on giving me 30 minutes so you can listen to what the hell I got to say. If I can't sell you on that, then you're not going to listen, even though I may have a great message for you. So this is a skill that you got to develop, is how are you going to get that knowledge across? Even once you've got this equation, you understand logically the equation I just explained to you, but do you understand it emotionally enough that you can start using it and putting it together and creating something new? Point number 3. And that's a question, not a statement. Question number 3. Today's topic is learned plus earned. This is the expertise equation. Point number 3. Here's the winning mix. Your experiences plus your skill of examination equals new knowledge. So when you hear me talk, or if you have ever experienced me giving a live presentation, this is what I'm giving you. I tell you something that I lived, then I tell you why it happened, and then I tell you what's useful about it. 3 steps. Story, what happened. Point, why I think it happened. Application, what's useful about it for you. Story, point, application. Some people put these in different order. Some people give you the point, then they'll tell you a story, then they'll give you the application. But if you're going to be an expert, you must master these 3 things. I'm going to tell you them one more time. Story, point, application. Story comes from your own experiences. Point is why something happened and what made it happen. Application is what makes it useful for you and whomever else may come after you. And this is how you create a new concept or a new idea or a new philosophy. Sometimes you can create all 3. And if you can brand them in some way, maybe give them a name or something that is proprietary to you, even better, because then you own it. Every expert does this. If you've been through a lot of stuff, but you can't draw any conclusions from the stuff that you've been through, here's my question to you. Who cares? All the time I have people who, once they see that I have written a lot of books, many of them I've published through my own company, and they are thinking of doing the same thing. A lot of people want to write a book. A lot of people want to put a book out for whatever reason. It's an ambition that many people have. I just want to write a book. I got a story. And people will come to me and they'll say something like, it always sounds the same. They'll say, well, I got a story. I've been through stuff and I want to share it with people. I think people could benefit from it because I've been through this and that. And sometimes they even go on and start telling me the things that they've been through. And here's the thing that you need to understand. All of you who have a story, because everybody who's listening to this has a story. All right, and you're thinking about sharing that story with the world or whoever you want your audience to be. Here's the thing you need to understand. You must, as the expert, because if you're writing a book, you're the expert on whatever that book is about. You must draw the conclusions from your story and tell your readers what those conclusions are and what they need to do with those conclusions. If you have not come up with those 2 things, the conclusions from what you've been through and what people need to do with it, then the story itself is not going to have much value. Now, if your story is crazy enough, if it's amazing enough and compelling enough, maybe just the story itself could be interesting. I mean, in the movies, people make movies about just telling the story of something that happened to a person, right? Maybe your story is just that incredible that somebody will option it and buy the rights to your story and make a movie out of it, and you don't even have to figure out why it makes sense and what people need to do with it. But if you plan on being an expert, okay, see, a person who tells a story and a person who's an expert are 2 different things. A storyteller, again, there are plenty of movies out there. I'm not a big movie guy, but you've probably seen movies where they just told a story, something that happened in somebody's life, and it's cool. Right? That was a great story. I like that movie. It was compelling. It was gripping. It was emotional. Made me laugh. Made me cry. Cool. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here as an expert, meaning I'm gonna tell you the story, but I'm also going to take the next step, which is tell you why that story happened. I'm going to interpret the story for you, and then I'm going to tell you what you can do with that information. Now I'm going to give you a call to action. What are your next steps? That's what an expert does. If you're going to be an expert or a teacher, you got to take that next step. So what is that going to be for you? Just the story itself is a commodity because everybody got one. All right. Now, is your story just that amazing that you can make thousands or millions of dollars off just telling your story? Maybe not. I don't think even my story is that amazing. I mean, my story is good, it's cool, but the fact that I take the next step 2 and step 3 in it, that's what makes me an expert. That's the part that I like. That's what I like doing. I don't like just telling the story and having you feel however you feel about the story, because look, everybody in the room got one. All right, what's going to make you any different? I'll tell you something funny. This event, there's an event that I was at earlier this year, and there was this guy who spoke. And then he was the only guy in the whole conference. A bunch of people spoke, but he was the only guy who said he was going to take questions. All right, so they set up these microphones in the crowd. And there's like 4,000 or 5,000 people in the room. So of course, a bunch of people lined up to ask this guy questions. And there was this one woman. She gets up on the microphone and she starts telling her story on the microphone. Now, mind you, she's supposed to be asking a question. She's not the speaker. All right, she's telling her story. Because a lot of people do this, especially if any of you who have ever done a Q&A, you know that people, before they even get to their question, they just want to tell you their story so that you understand the context behind it. But oftentimes people tell way too much story based on the question that they want to ask. That you don't even need the story, you just need the question. So this woman starts telling her story. She obviously doesn't understand this. She starts telling her story of all these things she's been through, and she's been through some rough stuff. If the thing she said was true, which I don't think she was making them up. And so she's saying all these things. She took about 5 minutes of time just to tell her story, and she didn't even ask a question. She just kept talking about all these things she's been through and all this stuff. And even though it wasn't funny, the stuff that she had been through, had been some rough stuff, it was funny because she was just telling this story. And I went through this, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and then I did this, and then I did that. And I'm like, does this woman understand that there's like 20 people behind her in line who also want to ask a question, and we only got 15 minutes. She basically ate up the whole Q&A time. The dude only got to answer 3 questions because she took all this time going through her whole story. And I'm telling you that to tell you this: your story itself is probably not one of the 1% that is just so amazing that people just want to hear the story and that's it. Your story itself matters. Yes, it does matter, because we all have one. That's your story is your life, right? It matters, but you must examine it and figure out what is the usefulness of this and how can anybody else get benefit from it. Those are the 2 additional steps that you got to take. All right, nobody is as interested in your story as you. Let me tell you that one more time. Nobody is as interested in your story as you. If you've been through a lot of stuff, but you can't figure out the next 2 steps of it, why it matters, and what anyone else can do with it, most people don't care. It's just a story. All right, if you have information but you haven't lived it, all right, then you're just a book come to life. All right, it's too easy to find another one. You're a commodity. People tell me all the time, listen, I have a story that I want people to know about. Listen, nobody cares about your story unless there's some real life application that comes with it most of the time. All right, and you're one in the top 1% of the 1%, or your story alone is just valuable just because. All right, good luck to you. All right, I can't help you with that because mine wasn't that great. All right, I had to take the extra steps to figure out how somebody else can get benefit from it. All right, so if that's you, you can help me out once you figure that out. All right, I can't go live a different life, so maybe you can help somebody else out actually, because I ain't trying to make a movie out of mine. Your job is to figure out the application and how it can be used. Then your job is to explain that application to the right people who need it. Not to everybody. Everybody does not need to hear your story. All right, there are certain people who need to hear it, but it ain't everybody. That woman who was in the Q&A line, and she started explaining her story to basically everybody because she's on a microphone. So we're all listening to this, and nobody wanted to be rude, and nobody was laughing because the stuff she was saying from her story was rough stuff, bad stuff that she had been through that I'm sure nobody else wants to go through. But we're all sitting there like, yo, miss, if we wanted to hear your story, you would be one of the speakers. All right, we don't want everybody in the room has a story. There's 5,000 stories in the room. All right, we ain't all getting up on the mic telling our story because we don't need to hear that shit. We came here for certain information. We want to hear you ask the question, let the man answer, the expert who's up there on the stage, and let the next person ask the question. We don't want to hear your story. And so many people, and this is something I've said already, all of us are narcissistic to some degree, or we're thinking more about ourselves than we are about others. But remember that your story has no value unless you could tell people how it can help them, not how you just want to tell everybody, especially people who didn't ask you to tell it. Now, if someone asks you for your story, go ahead, tell them every detail. But if they didn't ask you, don't force it on them. Let's recap today's topic, which is learned plus earned. This is an expertise equation. If you're an expert at a topic, or you will be, you need both sides of this equation working for you because they both have specific Uses and applications. Number one, earned expertise. This is the experience that you've been through. So what have you actually gone to? Where have you been? Have you done anything? Do you have any experiences that make you a person worth listening to? See my masterclasses on experience that I mentioned earlier. How do you do this? Get out of the house, get off your smartphone, stop looking down at your phone when you're out in public, go meet people and do things. Real life experience is the only way to get this. It is an investment of time, money, energy, and attention. Earned expertise gives you credibility. People want to know that you have actually lived the things that you are talking about, not just observed them. Anybody can observe things. It has very little value. Everything that you're going to talk about as an expert, you need to have lived yourself, because someone's going to ask you. And they shouldn't even have to ask you. It should be part of what you're teaching that you've lived it. Your feet got to be on the ground. Point number two, learned expertise. This is knowledge that you glean, first of all, from your own experiences. You must examine your experiences and figure out what value does it have to anyone other than just you. Your experience got to be looked into deeply, figured out what happened, why it happened, and how it happened. And get that information, and you also get information from other people in the form of books, lectures, events, videos, courses. You combine that knowledge that you get from other people with your own gleaned experience to get a better understanding, knowledge gleaned from your experience, to get a better understanding of why. And this is a skill that must be developed and nurtured over time and continuously worked on even once you have developed it. Point number three, the winning mix are experiences plus examination. This equals new knowledge. So when you hear me talk, or you ever heard any of my live presentations, that's what I'm always giving you. I tell you what I lived, I tell you why it happened, and I tell you what's useful about it. And now you have a new concept, new idea, or new philosophy that you can take with you. Sometimes it's a combination of all three. Every expert is an expert at doing this. That's what makes them an expert. If you've been through a lot of stuff, but you can't draw any conclusions from it, or you can't help other people get any value from what you've been through, most of them probably don't want to hear your life story. All right, it's just a story, and everybody has one. Yours is no better or worse than anybody else's unless you can get some value out of it. So if you have information, but you haven't lived it, then you're just a commodity. Because a lot of people have information that they haven't actually lived themselves. People tell me that they have story that they want to get out to the world, but nobody cares about your story. All right, unless, again, the 1% of the 1%, your story is so great that people just want to hear the story and they don't need anything else from it. My story wasn't that great. I had to do some extra work. Okay, so if your story is that great, then more power to you. Congratulations. But if your story is not so amazing that people just want to hear the story itself, you're going to have to do some extra work. And I just told you what the extra work is, and I can help you out with that a whole lot. All you got to do is follow this equation right here. You want some hands-on help with this? Reach out to me direct. Work on your game. Dre all day.